Hey everyone, welcome back to Filter Grade. Some of you guys really enjoyed our first Blender tutorial. For those of you that haven't watched it, we suggest checking it out so you have a better understanding of Blender and of where we left off in the previous lesson. We got some comments asking for a part 2, so we're going to pick up where we left off. And we appreciate all your comments, so feel free to leave more feedback on this one. And specifically let us know if you agree with this comment about how we got straight to the point rather than making a much longer video. Do you like how we skipped the unnecessary information, or would you rather us slow down and explain things in more detail? Let us know in the comments and by leaving a like or dislike. So in the previous video we covered the absolute basics of Blender, including basic movement and tools such as scale. We left off on how to color faces of a 3D shape and render out a two-dimensional image with a virtual camera. In this video we'll be covering some more advanced features that pick up right where we left off. We're going to begin with the next step after adding colors to your shape and show you how to add textures. Since Blender is often used to render 3D scenes that are photorealistic or cartoony or in some sort of style, texture is very important for conveying information and can add a lot of realism or non-realism to your projects. But first we will need to download some texture files. There are a lot of free and premium resources for textures, and you can do your own Googling, but for this example we used cc0textures.com. You can simply enter a search term there like bricks and download whatever resolution you like. In general, if you're able to, try to go for at least 4K. This will make it so that you can make your texture pretty big and it'll still look high resolution. Textures are more than just an image, although that does work to make a very basic texture. When you download one of these texture files, you'll notice there are several different files. We'll need the base image, the normal map, and the roughness map, in addition to other optional layers. Don't worry, we'll talk about those more. The normal map determines what the high and low points of the texture are, and the roughness map determines what points of the image are more or less reflective. For example, a metal texture will be highly reflective and a wood texture will be much less reflective. So go ahead and start up Blender now. We're fine using the default cube for this exercise, so we'll keep it. It might be useful to add a point light near your shape so that you can better see the texture, but the default light should be fine. You can always make it a little brighter or adjust its position if you need to. Next, make sure to change the render mode to Material Preview or Rendered for the best results. Material Preview will show you a flat rendition of your textures, whereas Rendered will show your textures with light sources involved. Go to the mode selection and choose Texture Paint. Now we're actually going to want to make a second workspace, so move your cursor to the very top right of the 3D viewer until it turns into a crosshair, then drag left to create a second viewer next to it. In this second workspace, change the editor type to Shader Editor. This is going to open a pretty intimidating looking menu, but we'll just cover the important parts that you need to know to do this. This is where we will create our texture and material. Click on the Active Tool and Workspace Settings tab, and Texture Settings will come up. This appears based on being in the Texture Paint space in our first workspace. Now this menu is a little less intimidating. Click on the plus symbol near the top and select Base Color. Leave the default settings as they are, they won't matter in the long run. Moving over to our newly created node, titled Bricks Base Color, we can add our main image. Click on the folder symbol and import the base image based on how it's labeled in the file structure. Repeat this same process and add roughness, then select the roughness image. Next up is displacement, and while there is a displacement category, it'll actually work best if we use the bump category. Along with displacement is normal map, so go ahead and add this node next. Drag a line from the normal output here to the normal input on the bump node. This combination of nodes will give your textures depth. To change the intensity of this effect, you can adjust the distance slider on the bump node. Doing this will give you a lot more control over how textured your texture actually is. Now just note that all of this depends on what exact files come with the material you downloaded. Some of them may be present and some of them may not be. They'll probably all have a base color and the normal map at least, but the rest may vary. Each file should have a label that matches up with something in Blender though, so you should be able to figure it out. And really, as long as you have base color, that's a good start. You'll be able to at least see what your scene will look like. Now what about when you want to expand your shape? By default, your texture will stretch to fill the space, but in many cases this probably isn't what you want. For example, you've set your brick wall so that the bricks are exactly the size that they should be. What you really need is for the texture to start repeating itself so that you don't lose any resolution quality or sizes don't start to become unrealistic. This is actually really simple to do. On the top right corner of the screen, click on the Options drop-down menu and check the box that says Correct Face Attributes. Now when you expand any face in any direction, the texture will repeat itself to fit the space, but it won't physically increase in size. Now you can stretch any face of the cube to be a new shape and not have to worry about how your texture reacts. If the texture was set up correctly, then it should repeat infinitely with no visible seams. So instead of the bricks stretching to become giant bricks, they're just going to repeat themselves to make a giant brick wall. Textures can definitely be complicated, and this was just scratching the surface. With this information, you'll be able to make basic textured materials out of existing free images, and that's a great starting point for any Blender newcomer, and it's a giant upgrade from the bland, gray, faceless images that you'll be working with at the very start. Another thing we're going to talk about today is modifiers. Modifiers are commonly used tools that can be stacked on top of each other to modify your shape. Think of them as presets or shortcuts. They often simplify what would normally be a complex series of actions. Another great part about these modifiers is that they are non-destructive. They're a bit like filters that you can simply toggle on and off. If you want to go back to what you had before, simply toggle off the modifier. To see your modifiers, have a shape selected and click on the wrench symbol on the right side of the screen. You can click to add a new modifier and you'll see a massive list of them to choose from. Let's look at one of the more basic ones, mirror. When you apply it, nothing will happen right away. Select your entire cube and move it on the x-axis, and you'll see another cube mirroring it, and this is because by default, the mirror effect is set to mirror on the x-axis. If you select the y-axis, then the shape will be mirrored if you move on the y-axis, and of course the same applies to the z-axis. This particular modifier can be useful for creating a symmetrical model. It saves time because you only need to create one half of your model, then you can just mirror the rest. By the way, this modifier is probably the absolute most useful one on the entire list, and it's also the most straightforward. Most of the modifiers are advanced or specific to a certain scenario, but just know for reference in the future that they are great ways for advanced users to make shortcuts for things they know take much longer. However, knowing what's happening behind the scenes will give you a better understanding of the functionality of Blender. We just felt it was important that you knew that modifiers existed and that they can provide some shortcuts later on in your Blender journey. In the previous video, we didn't really show you any practical examples, so let's make a simple table in this video. There are many valid ways to create an object, but the easiest way for a new user to think about 3D modeling is that every object that is a unique item in the real world should be a unique object in Blender. So for our table, the top panel and then each of the 4 legs will each be its own object that we can edit independently. There are ways to create this all out of one shape, but this should be a bit more intuitive to you beginners. Start by creating a cube, and then create the tabletop using the Scale tool. We're going to make the shape flatter, wider, and more rectangular. It'll be easiest to use the top-down view to align it to the grid, so press the 7 key on your number pad for that. Now we want to create the legs. Create a new cube object and arrange it on the grid using the top-down view. Rotating back around so we can see the cube, make sure that the cube is vertically aligned correctly so that it's attached to the bottom of the table surface and not sticking through, using the Move tool. Scale it to the size you want it using the Scale tool. Now select the face that is aiming down while in face select mode, and use the Move tool to drag it down until it's as long as you want it to be. Now you have a single straight square leg, but a real table leg generally tapers in a bit. With that bottom face still selected, use the Scale tool to scale only that face. This will taper in the entire leg since it's one object still. Now you can go into object mode, select the entire leg, and press Shift D to create a duplicate. To keep it aligned, press the X or Y key to align it on the same grid as the other leg, and when you're done with that, you can select both legs, duplicate them both, then align them using the same methods. And now you have a simple table. This is a very basic 3D design with simple elements, but the point of this very simple exercise is to understand how to arrange components together and how to use simple Blender tools in conjunction with each other. If you want to put the texture lessons you learned into practice, you can follow the instructions from earlier in this video to give this table a great wood texture. I definitely recommend giving that a shot. We hope that this Blender tutorial helped you to understand textures and Blender, as well as how to make a simple 3D model with various shapes. All of the tools in Blender make logical sense, but the hard part is knowing when to use specific tools to accomplish what you need. Thanks for watching this filter grade video. Let us know if this Blender tutorial helped you understand textures more, and we'll see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment down below. And if you're looking for professional LUTs, Lightroom desktop and mobile presets, Premiere Pro templates, and more photo and video education, visit filtergrade.com today.